Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What's the worst or most unfair thing a teacher has ever done to you or a classmate? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. My 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Hannah, would bully this kid that obviously had serious behavioral or family issues. She was not at all sympathetic to him and literally made him sit in a cubicle desk the entire day that she called the box. It was so infuriating and humiliating to watch. She also once told me she was going to nail my ears to the wall, so I reported her. I hated her so much, and I felt really bad for the kid that she really scapegoated. Hope he's doing well today. I once had a friend of mine die. I was not told properly. They announced it over an effing intercom after pulling the students who knew him out of classes. It was a gruesome death. I was then reprimanded for grieving. Somehow they missed the fact that I was his neighbor, but got his other neighbors. In 1st grade, I didn't want to eat a brownie that a classmate had brought in for their birthday. My teacher decided that this was incredibly rude and that I wasn't allowed to go outside for recess until I ate the brownie. When she wasn't looking, I wrapped it in a napkin and placed it carefully in a garbage can. She noticed, took it out of the trash, unwrapped it, and still made me eat it. College physics. We had like 4 question exams, but if we made any trivial area in our work, even if we arrived at the right answer, he would take off like 23 to 25 points, which would essentially cause your grade in the class to drop by a letter grade. One time, he was doing work on the board and made a mistake like that. One of the students got up, wrote F on the board, and walked off. I had a teacher in high school who hated me. I wasn't the best literature student, but I hardly deserved her treatment. She once ripped up a paper of mine in front of the class, saying it was the worst thing she ever read. I had to get it graded by the English department. My uncle worked at that school as a guidance counselor, but before that, he was the English head when this particular teacher started. I think she took out her hate for my uncle on me. In 5th grade, a teacher handed out a test and told everyone not to talk or you will get a 0 on it. One of the kids asked what the date was, and she gave him a 0 right there. Another kid interrupted her to say that that's not fair, he was just asking the date, and she gave him a 0 also. Worst teacher I ever had. My father died early morning of the first day back at school for the year. He had been sick a few months, and most of my summer holidays was me visiting him at the hospice. At the end of the previous school year, the school decided to change the school top. I went back to school day 2, and I was called up to the vice principal's office because I didn't have the new shirt. They knew my father had died the previous day. I was told if I didn't have the right shirt tomorrow, I would be suspended. I had to scrape together the money and get the bus to the shops to get the shirt that day because my mom was dealing with enough shit and I didn't want to add to it. That was the day I stopped caring about school, and it was a real turning point for the worse in my life. I was an A student before then. Gave me a 0 because I never clicked a link to an article we were supposed to summarize. It was on the blackboard, so apparently it tracks who clicks what. I play a lot of games and use my computer a lot, so sometimes I just highlight and Control-C. This is probably a habit I developed from playing Counter-Strike and URLs opening in the Steam browser, but I really can't remember where it came from. He asked me who I copied my work from, and when I contested and showed him how I go to URLs, he refused to believe me. I received a 0, and when I asked him to prove that I copied my work from someone else, he refused to do the work. I asked my 6th grade science teacher if he could switch my seat to the front of the room because I was having trouble seeing the board. I wear glasses and have just real shit eyes, and he decided for some reason that I had an ulterior motive for wanting to be in the front of the room. To punish me for trying to pull one over on him, he moved me to the very back of the room for the rest of the year where I could not see the board at all, so I learned nothing that year. Because we didn't have textbooks, everything was put up on the board. My dad punched me in the face and left a bruise. I wore sunglasses to 9th grade to hide it, and in the middle of one class the teacher was yelling at me from the front of the room to take them off. I asked if we could speak in the hallway, and she kept yelling at me. I took them off and everyone was shocked and focused on me the rest of the class, exactly what I was trying to avoid. Day ended when my dad showed up at the school and explained I was troubled, and he was taking me out early for counseling. He ended up dropping me off at a hospital and Baker acting me and left me there for 2 to 3 months until I was released to my mom's care. Didn't speak to me for 5 years. Yes, that's really effed up. Got thrown into a group of Chinese exchange students who could barely speak English. Cool, but I had trouble understanding them. It is what it is. I have no problem with them. I was concerned that the language barrier would be a problem in a group project, and I asked if there were any open spots in other groups. My teacher basically called me a racist, insinuated that I was a bigot, and bigots like me have caused him lots of pain, and asked me to switch classes. A month into the semester. I'm talking to the dean now. What really sucks is that I liked my teacher, and being called a racist by him hurt. It's not good. So the teacher asked you to switch classes because of his past. Doesn't seem very professional. Chemistry class. I was getting bullied once. The guy decided to mock me and take my lab sheet I was working on. Tears it up right in front of me with a huge grin. I go up and inform the teacher I needed a new one and why, and she tells me that I shouldn't be goofing around and fails me for the lab. I literally told her that this kid was bullying me and I was minding my own business, but she wouldn't relent. In 7th grade, we had a group project to create a magazine. Our group's magazine was supposed to be an animated theme, with articles being written by animals for animals. I was assigned to write a poem. Now, I've always been a good reader and a decent writer, and I wasn't bad at poetry either. On top of this, my father had commissioned a painting with the Clock of Life poem on it around the time I was born. I grew up loving the painting and the poem. I took inspiration from that poem. A theme of time running out, that's all. And I wrote a good poem. It was done days before the due date, but I forgot our animal theme. On the day it was due, I quickly adjusted man to mammal and such changes. It really messed with the meter, but it was done. Now, my painting went to another student, our editor, and he compiled the magazine before turning it in, so it was a week or more before the next step. My teacher pulled me out of class into the hallway. He told me he knew I had copied the poem and that I would get a 0. I protested my innocence, of course. He said he knew it wasn't mine because it was too good for a student to write. Tearfully, I still told him I wrote it. He said that if I insisted, he would find where I copied it from and give me a 0 and get me in trouble when he did. This sounded fine to me since there was nothing to find, and I really wanted to get away from being yelled at. When grades came out, I learned he gave me a 0 on the poem anyway. In addition, the magazine was returned to the editor, not the individual contributors, so I never got my poem back. I can't even remember the words now, but this was one of the traumatic points in my childhood that taught me not to listen to authority. Later in high school, I wrote a journal entry for another English teacher about the experience. I didn't realize it at the time, but she shared the original teacher's last name, Beck. She happened to be married to a history teacher of that name. When she graded my journal, she apologized to me and insisted she was no relation to the original teacher, which was kind of weird, but it did feel nice to have some acknowledgement of how messed up the situation had been. High school French class. It was my birthday, and the teacher gave me this small bag of candy and a cute note. I thought it was really thoughtful because you don't really expect teachers to give a shit about your birthday in high school. I thank her, pop a piece of candy in my mouth, and promptly get a detention for eating in her classroom. I was shocked and nearly cried because it was my first detention ever. Everyone else was just as surprised and started arguing with her, but that bitch wouldn't budge. And that's my story of how I got my first ever detention by eating a piece of candy the teacher gave me on my effing birthday. In the words of Admiral Akbar, it's a trap. Sorry, bad impression. I was chosen for a dance competition in school in 3rd grade. Since it was a girls' school and I was not very thin, I was playing the boy for a couple dance numbers. After a week of practice, I was enjoying myself, and the teacher had taken money from us for costumes. And one morning, I wasn't visited by my partner to call me for practice. Assuming she was absent, I requested my class teacher to let me go for practice. I'd been almost 15 minutes late, and I ran my way to the room to see the other girls dancing with my partner, and I went in apologizing to my teacher for being late. And she pulled me out of the practice room and told me they had taken someone else, and I kind of begged, apologizing for being late. She got frustrated and told me no, they wanted someone better looking, and thrust my money into my hand. I ran and sobbed my way to my classroom where my teacher told me to quiet down or leave class. It was one of the most painful memories of my childhood. Later, I found out the teacher had replaced me with her niece, and I was a stand-in, an unaware stand-in, so that practice wouldn't be interrupted. Maybe not the worst, but 2 examples spring to mind. First up, someone threw a stone at another kid. I was pedestrian to the whole thing. Teacher literally comes storming up to me and drags me back inside. The kid who got hit by the stone didn't know who did it. The teacher forced him to point the finger at me, so I got the blame, even though I knew who did it. Also, they were confiscating yo-yos after a kid hit himself in the face while doing a trick. But a few of us found a sneaky little area where we could hide behind a wall and use our yo-yos. Not sneaky enough though. Got mine taken off me. Come and get it at the end of the day. Go to the teacher to get it back and he says, "What yo-yo?" It was a good one too. God damn you, Mr. Whitaker of Parkfield Middle School. God damn you. In 6th grade, I was really into art, and my older sister had just been in an art show, so I was constantly doodling. So on my first day in my 3rd period class, I had Mrs. Wagner in math skills. I was a shy, sweet girl, always trying to make my teachers happy. We all sat down, and I was in the front row. I had a beautiful picture my sister drew for me. I was showing all my teachers. Mrs. Wagner was standing in front of me. She looked over the class very seriously. Since she was in front of me, I showed her the picture, telling her my sister made it for me, yada yada. She smiled and said, "That's a great picture, but we don't do art in here," she responded. Okay, felt a little embarrassed, but whatever. I noticed my pencil needs sharpening, so I go to sharpen it. As I return, class has begun, so I'm focused. Until the girl behind me let me know that my picture was missing, and Mrs. Wagner crumbled the artwork and trashed it. I was shocked and hurt. That class was very difficult. The class was always disruptive due to her strict attitude alone, and gave me a poor foundation in math. She constantly told us we wouldn't make it. Also, keep in mind, this was a middle school in a big, poor city. So thanks, Mrs. Wagner, you insufferable bitch. That was really not cool, Mrs. Wagner. Not cool at all. A teacher who already didn't like me at all asked me to turn the lights off so she could play something on the projector. And she got pissed off at me for being unable to reach the lights because I'm 4 effing feet tall. She sighed loudly and said, "Of course you can't even do that. Other student's name, can you do it please?" The reason she disliked me is because I was generally unmotivated and behind in class. Turns out I was very depressed at that time, verging on suicidal. Yes, I didn't finish homework and I started skipping class, but just a year ago, I had been a highly motivated star pupil who enjoyed class. I feel like that kind of dramatic change should set off alarm bells. Would have been nice if she asked what was wrong, rather than get angry at me all the time, especially for having dwarfism. Like, what the F, lady? It was a super sunny and hot day, and I was in class. Then I just wanted to take a quick sip on my bottle. Other teachers had no problem when it's such a heat. And it was 3 days before summer break, so nothing was really happening anymore in school. And then the teacher noticed me and came over to my place. He said something like, "Either you put that bottle away, or you go outside the classroom and do whatever you want." 16-year-old me just went outside the classroom, and my classmates were going nuts because he probably expected me to just put my bottle away. He got super angry as I closed the door and took a seat in the hall. I just heard him complaining about me and so on. After 5 minutes or so, he came out and sent me to the principal. The principal was chill, and I had no consequences, but from that day, the teacher always hated me and gave me bad grades because I wanted to drink something on a hot day. This one stands out in my memory for just how absurd it was. I was in 8th grade, and for reasons that I can't remember now, I was supposed to bring an empty soda can to my Earth and Space science class. I didn't have time to get back to my locker at any point that morning, so I had to carry it with me. My school had a no food or drink in class rule, but obviously the can was empty, and another teacher had directed me to take it to class, so it would be fine, right? Nope. I had this dickhead teacher for a class that was essentially designed to teach 14-year-olds how to have shitty it was to be poor. Guy was about 6'10" and weighed maybe 150 pounds. You could push him under a door, and he was a dick. He sees the can and immediately raises his voice, points to the can, and says, "Throw it away." I start to protest since I had a reason to have it, but before I could say 2 words, he interjected, "No excuses, throw it away." I explain that it's for my Earth and Space science class, but he doesn't care and won't hear it, so I have to toss it. I get to my Earth and Science classes, and when my teacher asks for it, I explain to him why I don't have it. He left the classroom, and I don't know what happened in the intervening time when he was gone, but the angry pencil didn't give me shit for the rest of the semester. Seriously, what a dick. My second grade teacher was doing an arts and crafts thing for Father's Day. We had to make a paperclip out of some material with the shape of a mouse cut out of felt. She said to start at the sides, but me, being the enthusiastic idiot that I was, cut the shape from the middle instead of saying, orangle, you should have started at the side. She took everything away from me for wasting felt and said I could not make anything. So I had to come home and tell my mom we did nothing for Father's Day, which was unusual as we did something for both Mother's and Father's Day each year. She found out from some of the other parents that they had made something in class, and I confessed when confronted with it. My mother was mortified hearing how my teacher treated me. The teacher had a pick on me all year, and to this day I still despise that woman. Instead of using my mistake as a teaching moment, she turned it into a horrible memory that I carry to this day, even though it is quite silly in the grand scheme of things. In my life, many people have wronged me, and I rarely hold a grudge, but what she did to a small 7 to 8-year-old boy who made a dumb mistake and how she treated me that year will stay with me for life. In the end, it did give me a valuable lesson. Never ever punish a kid for harmless mistakes, which can be used as teaching moments instead. That, and some people just deserve to die lonely, miserable, and forgotten by everyone.